I'm joined by Sky News political contributor Chris Uhlmann. Chris, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to start, though, with this extraordinary pager attack by, Hezbollah says it's Israel. It's hard to think it would be anyone else other than Mossad that's done this. Incredible, this attack hitting thousands of Hezbollah operatives, and quite a contrast with the failure of Israeli intelligence almost a year ago on October 7 of last year.
I think that's a really good point to make here. And so it shows that when Israeli intelligence is good, it is very, very good. Think about what had to happen in order to attack those pages. What had to happen was they had to know that those pages were being delivered, that they were moving to that form of communication. They had to know how they were coming. Let's assume they were coming via Iran. They had to know the trail. They had to be able to intercept them at some stage and put explosives into them, because apparently the idea that they just overheated the batteries wouldn't work. And then they had to wait till they were delivered, know that they were in those people's hands, and then set them off. The message it sends to Hezbollah is that we are all over you like a rash. We know who you are, we know where you are, we know what you're doing. It's also now attacked their communication system, which means they've gone from mobile phones to pages. They'll now have to go to pads and pens. That will make it difficult for them to communicate among themselves. So an extraordinary intelligence operation. But as you say, underlines the extraordinary intelligence failure in the days leading up to October 7, which was an indictment of the Israeli security service.
The other question this raises, Chris, is with Hezbollah threatening now retaliation, are we closer again to an all-out wide-scale war in that region?
Yeah, well, what do we know? We know there is a war in Gaza at the moment with Hamas. We know that since October, the Israelis have killed 500 Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. Get your head around that. So there is a war going on there. They've actually withdrawn 60,000 people from the border with Lebanon. So does there become a war there? Could there be a war in the West Bank? And of course, there's Iran as well. And I noticed, looking at something on the Council of Foreign Relations website, there are now 18 US warships in the Middle East, 2 aircraft carriers, 11 destroyers, 1 submarine, and the US doesn't usually let people know where its submarines are, which is in striking distance from Iran. So the potential for that to explode into a conflict that drags in the United States is real.
Yeah, well, they're certainly prepared for it if that does erupt in that fashion. Chris, you've just got back from the United States yourself. Give me your read on the presidential race, where things are at. So hard given how fluid things are. And since you've been back, another assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Yeah, the thing that's obvious when you're in the United States is how deeply divided the community is, how you essentially now have Republicans and Democrats who can't really talk to each other, who live in divided communities, who don't understand each other at all. I think the best comment I had from anyone when I was in the US was a long conversation I had with an Uber driver in Atlanta. And I said, well, who do you think will win? He said, I think Kamala will win. He said, if she does, there'll be trouble. There'll be trouble. And I think absolutely there'll be trouble. And of course, we now know it's not just Republicans who carry guns, it's Democrats as well, and the supporters of that side of politics in 2 assassination attempts. Now, the United States, once upon a time I would have thought it was impossible could head into another civil war. I don't think it's out of the question now. When I say civil war this time around, it wouldn't be state versus state like last time. It would be 2 heavily armed groups of populations at war with each other on the streets of the United States. That's not impossible to imagine now. That's no longer in the realms of fiction. So it is a very difficult and dangerous place in the lead up to the election.
It's tragic, isn't it? And given the amount of weapons there are in that society, it's not that far from reality to imagine that, is it?
Oh, mate, I went to a guy who's a farmer, a rancher, who's hosting a wind farm in Georgia. He's very happy with it. He's very, in fact, it was in Texas. And I asked him when we leave, can I use your loo? And he had an office outside. And when I went to use the loo, there were 11 different firearms just hanging up. One of them was a 6-shooter and the other one were semi-automatic weapons. And that's, that is not unusual in the United States.
No, it's not. And just finally, before you go, tomorrow the Prime Minister heads to the United States for the Quad Summit.
Yeah.
Is that still a significant body that we should be trying to nurture, given the uncertainty we're seeing out of the White House? We don't know where that's going in November.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a really important regional, it's not an alliance, it's a friendship, if you like. It's an arrangement between different countries. It's important that India is in that relationship. It's good that you're going to report on it. Of course, the architecture around it does lots of different things, but China is the main game. I would assume that one of the things they'll be talking about there, which the Foreign Ministers Group did, is what's going on in the South China Sea, particularly with the Philippines at the moment. I think that's a real powder keg, that part of the world. And India is always interesting in that, because India is kind of an outrider. Like the last time I was in Washington, all the talk of the town was the big bear hug between Modi and Putin. Like where India sits in its relationship with both Russia and with India is an interesting question for the Quad.
Yep, indeed. And Donald Trump says he's meeting with Modi over coming days as well. So another element to keep an eye on. Chris Uhlmann, thank you as always.
Thanks, mate.